Welcome to another Development Accelerator video. My name is James, and in this video I would like to show you a brief overview in the first part of a two-part series that demonstrates how the Development Accelerator can be integrated with Contentstack. For those of you who don't know, Contentstack is a headless CMS designed to manage, deliver and scale content across multiple channels. And unlike traditional CMS platforms that tightly couple the back and front end, Contentstack follows an API-first approach. The Development Accelerator can be run in many different guises, both as a console application and a command line application that can be run as part of your build process. It will also run on different operating systems, including Windows, Unix and Mac. In this instance, I am running it as a console application and will be demonstrating how the Development Accelerator can create TypeScript models for a Contentstack React.js application. This video assumes you have some working knowledge of Contentstack. You can see here that we've already configured two branches that we can use to pull Contentstack content types and global fields, and then serialize them out as TypeScript models. First of all, I will go in and show you how we can just serialize those models from an existing configuration, and then I will take you through creating a new branch, and finally will show you some of the configuration that applies to the model generator and how it integrates with Contentstack. So with all that said, let's get into it. I'm going to select the main branch by entering 0 here. And you may have briefly noticed that some progress bars appeared as it pulled in information using the Contentstack API about all the different content types and global fields it was serializing. Now you can see them listed here, and if I have to use the keyboard to navigate, and if I page down you'll see there are globals down there as well. We can select groups of templates by selecting the top level. We can also select all, and we can also select individual content types or globals. In this instance, I'm just going to select all the content types themselves. So I'll scroll back up to the top and select content types using the spacebar and hit enter. You can see now that it's asking us where we'd like to output these serialized files and giving us the option to just press enter and accept the default, which is what I'm going to do. You can see that it says it's exported 50 templates. So let's press enter and it takes us back to the main menu. I'm going to drag over the directory here and we can see here are the 50 templates it exported. And let's open up one. So you can see here's the serialized file, the TypeScript model. It's a fairly simple one, but you can see that it's actually referencing CLR menu entry. So it's assuming that this will be exported separately and in the same folder. There is an option to stop it doing this and have the referenced types serialized in line if you want. And I'll show you how to do that. You can also set the path to where the different types would be located. Here's a quick example of the serialized models in action. You can see that I have a model generation folder here. I have some VS Code bits and pieces set up. I'll show it in VS Code in a second. But you can see that if I go into main here, which is the main branch, I've actually split it out, the content types in there and the global fields in here. So you can see that all working separately. And then also in the Contentstack folder, we have some general things. We have this type that gets imported. So let's bring it over. Let's bring VS Code over and have a look. So here's VS Code. We can see all the different things here. If we look at the types, we have these are just things that we've defined that we then import in. So things like hosted file, these get used in the mapping file. Published details just gets added to every model. The same with link is a mapping file thing, and then we have a base Contentstack class as well. And let's now quickly look in here so we can see if we look at something like page. You can see here's the page itself and it's including the base content stack, and you can see if you come through here. So these are objects that perhaps are in modular blocks or modular blocks and things like that that aren't reference types in themselves, but these are subtypes as we call them, but you can see them called out here. And they get used, and there's quite a few of them here because this is actually a block here. You can see this is where they're all being referenced. Yep. So, and then we can come on here and look at something like footer. See, and you can see all the references are working properly. That's all been through the configuration, and we can look in the global fields, and we've got SEO here. Next, I want to show you how to import a new branch from Contentstack. In the Development X-ccelerator, the term area is often used, but it means branch when talking about Contentstack. So I'm going to hit N to create a new area, and you can see that it's saying, do you want to use the name James? And that's because I did it previously, and there's a branch called James, which is the one I want to import. But if it wasn't, you can just type in the name here. If it can't find it, then it will just take you back to the main screen. Hit James there. You can see that it acted just like it does when you want to serialize out items from an existing branch, and you get the progress bars. But in this case, all we want to do is create the configuration. So I'm going to hit the space bar there and hit enter. It's still asking me which path to use to output to, because that will be saved as part of the configuration. So we'll hit enter, and then we're going to hit enter again, and now it says what do you want to call the configuration. Well, I'm going to call it James. This is being saved to the disk so that the next time you run the application, James will be there. And that's it. That's how you create, or import I should say, a new area. Lastly, I want to dive into the general configuration. General configuration is kind of a broad term here. It's used to cover things that configure how the Development X-ccelerator runs and performs, like window size and position can be set, whether you want to see directory browsers in a window environment. It only works in Windows. But also there are things that are specific to the types of services that you have implemented. In particular, the extraction and generation classes drive certain configuration options. So, for example, when we're pulling models from Contentstack, we need to have the ability to set the Contentstack URL and the various keys and things that Contentstack needs for integration. So with that being said, let's hit G and we can come in here. So you can see that we've got 20 different things here that we can do. You know, things that are simple like adding documentation and header and separator value for property names. That kind of more applies to non-React based model generation. But then we have things that are very specific to Contentstack, like the URL, the authorization key, the API key. You can see that those two keys are starred out because they're marked as sensitive information, and on this screen they get hidden, but when you dive into the next step, if I was to hit 5 or 6, then you would see the actual values and be able to edit them. So let's show you the add documentation, because that's just a Boolean type. You can see that we can just turn that feature off, which I'll go yes, that's been done. And you can see here it says add documentation is now false. That means that it's been changed in memory. So that means if I was to run an extraction now, the documentation wouldn't be added, but it also has been persisted to the disk in the modelgen.config file in the general section, so the next time you run the tool, that will be loaded up and be used in that state. Now we have some interesting things here for 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. These allow you to control how the models get generated for Contentstack. Subcontent types are those kind of objects that exist in your model that aren't global or reference types. So by default you want to export those. But of course you could turn them off, and then you'd have to reference them separately. There's no way to separately export those. You also have the ability to turn on and off the global and the reference types. If you turn those on, then all of the global and reference types are going to be created inline in your model. But obviously that's going to make your model files a lot bigger, and it's actually going to slow down the application because it has to do a much bigger deep dive into the JSON that comes from Contentstack to figure out those global and reference types. And then of course you can set the path that's used when you turn these two off and you want to just reference the appropriate global and reference type. These are the paths you can set to where those types will be stored. Yeah, and then finally you've got the 15, 16 and so on. These allow you to change the type change the services that are associated and run with the application. The kind of interesting one here is the class generation one, because that has an associated mappings file with it. So when you change that, it will actually ask you if you want to change the mappings file to be the correct one for that service, and you can say yes, or you can say no and add your own. But in this case, I'm just going to show you the quotation service just to show you how that works, because that's a simple one. So when you do a model extraction from a particular branch, in this case, or an area in other scenarios, you get prompted with a little quotation, and it comes from one of these services. In this case, we've got it set to the Humorous API service. I'm just going to change it over to Inspirational, hit enter, and now you can see that the quote service has changed here, and that's also changed in memory, so it's now using that one in memory. And that's really it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.